Good afternoon, everybody. Sarah here. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad that you are too. So I wanted to share some insights and awarenesses that have been on my heart for some time now, and that I think will be really helpful for you in your journey to liberation and living the most liberated life possible. So when I think about shame, I think about that I have been studying shame both intentionally and unintentionally for 45 years, so my whole life. And for most of my life, it was unintentionally studying it, and now it is intentionally studying it. And when I think of shame, I think of the opposite of shame, which I consider to be honor. And so one of the stories that has been told to me in my experience of growing up and hearing stories over and over and over again, that has greatly impacted my awareness of shame. Well, I'll get into talking about it more specifically so it's more understandable, but as the big picture, we'll say it's impacted my big picture understanding of shame and who I am. It's the story of Adam and Eve. And when I think about the story of Adam and Eve, it's really about what I was taught within the church and the story that I was told as a young person of how we came to be here on earth, right? How earth came to be, how the universe, the whole creation came to be. And the way that this story gets told traditionally is that they're in the garden and Eve gets tricked. And again, everybody's version, we'll say, maybe is a little bit different, but the general gist, right? Bear with me. The general gist is that Eve gets tricked by the serpent to eat from the tree that God has said not to eat from. And she eats from it. And at that moment, she becomes aware that she has done something very wrong, and that she is wrong for having done it, right? And so she begins to see herself as wrong, as no longer being good, as no longer being in good graces with the God who created her. And sets into motion this whole course that changes history, and the way that humans now see themselves. And so there's this introduction of shame, right? And she and Adam in conversation, they become aware that they are naked. In other words, they weren't aware that they were naked originally, and then they become aware as a result of this interaction, this circumstance, this event. And they end up getting, in conversation with God and get removed or pushed out, exited from the Garden of Eden. Okay, so that's the story again, the gist, right, of what is commonly understood. And so the retelling of this, I know for myself as a child, I heard that story, I don't know, a bazillion times. It's in the Bible, it's preached about, there's all kinds of, ways in which I would have heard it. And what I now know about the way that the brain works and the way that the mind works, is that when we repeat those types of stories over and over and over again, the mind retains it and believes it even deeper, even greater, we'll say. So when I think now about the story of Garden of Eden, the Garden of Eden, the story of Adam and Eve, I become aware, wow, retelling this story is not useful. It's not helpful because it's actually just reinforcing something, this story of how shame came into the world. It's now reinforcing it over and over and over again in my mind and in the minds of anyone that is hearing the story repeatedly. And then two, it's also perpetuating this idea, this belief, this generational curse, which is what it is, refer to as the truth. And it also is inferring that the woman is shame, right? So it doesn't get told that way, but when you understand how the mind hears those types of circumstances, and you could just think about something that's happened in your own life where you get told, or your mind hears the information from another human as that's not good enough, you're not doing this right, gets translated for most of us as there's something wrong with me, I didn't do this right, therefore there's something wrong with me, right? There's not something wrong with the behavior or the circumstance, but there's actually something wrong with me, which is literally what shame is, right? It's more of an expanded definition, we'll say, of shame, is that there's something wrong with you. So thinking that through, right, the numerous impacts that has had on us as a people. Think about that, like from the beginning, right, or at least the way that many of us have been taught that was the beginning, shame is introduced into the world via the woman, and she now carries that as like the thing that she contributed into all of the future generations. Whoa, right? Like, whoa, mind-blowing. And you think about the struggles that women have had over the years, the generations, right? All of the different ones. Just think about it. I don't need to list them all for you. There's just so many really just right off the surface that your brain is able to come up with of all the ways that when the woman is identified as the one who brought in shame, who created shame, who manifested shame, whoa, right? It makes sense why women have struggled so much in the ways that they have struggled. Just look at today. And in today's world and today's culture, the ways in which women struggle, the stories in which the stories that women struggle with, right? All the things related to body image and the way that they look, right? And the way that they should look, their body types, their presentation, makeup, no makeup, thin, all of the things that women struggle with, let alone the challenges and the differentials in power and control in the world, and what women get paid, and all of the things, right? Again, you know what they are. That this ends up getting perpetuated as part of that original story that's been passed down for, again, generations. So one of the other things that really stands out to me is the joke that will get heard about the story of Adam and Eve, and how the woman is to blame for all that has happened, right? For all of the not good that has happened in the world. I don't know if you've heard that story or that joke, but I've definitely heard it many times. So we're unconsciously, I would say a lot of people are unconsciously retelling this story. Some definitely intentionally and consciously repeating the story that women are lesser than, that women are the weaker sex, and repeating it in a way that is absolutely not helpful, and intentionally leaning in that direction, right? Women need to be cared for, they need to be provided for, because they literally can't do it for themselves. But then there are a whole bunch of other people that I'm really talking to here who don't consciously think that way, right? And probably could get offended at hearing this message, like, I don't do that. I treat women with respect, and I believe they can take care of themselves and they can provide for themselves. But here's the thing, when you're telling this other story that is part of the culture and is part of the religious stories that you know, that you believe is truth, when you're telling that over and over again, and that is your framework that you're working off of in your mind, you can't help but incorporate it into your behavior, into your actions, into your thoughts. And so you see in relationships where there's this power struggle, this power dynamic, and you've been told that it's happening for a reason, right? The way that we've been taught traditionally. And you can see, how is it we're still struggling with those same things bazillions of years now here in the future, Like, how is that possible? It's possible because we keep retelling that same story and a bunch of stories that have come as a result of that original story. And so we retell and we retell, like, women are the lesser sex, women are the ones that struggle in all these various ways. And we keep retelling those stories, right? Women can't make as much money, women don't make as much money. Just that one story alone, as we continue to tell it over and over again, we're actually creating it to continue in our present lives, in modern day right now, and for you individually. The more you repeat it individually, just the one about money, let alone the ones about what you should and shouldn't look like, and what you should and shouldn't be doing as like your responsibilities within the family, within the community, within your job, that is like a derivative of the original story, and therefore you continue to repeat those now new stories for you over and over and over again, right? I should be thin. I should be this with my body. I should be that with my body. I can't ever get ahead. I am always too busy. All the varying thoughts that we continue then to repeat and repeat and repeat that then become created again and again and again in your life today. So the answer, right? The solution, literally just stopping repeating of the story, just literally like stopping that. Just don't repeat the story anymore, right? And that goes for like the original story of Adam and Eve. And it goes for all of the sub-stories that have come out as a result of that, of anywhere where you think women are not as capable, where women have to be like taken care of by someone else, or that, someone else has to come in and take care of the woman or rescue her, or that your body has to look a certain way because it's been influenced, you've been influenced by the thoughts out here, the world out here that again is living off of that type of original story like we were told about Adam and Eve. Okay, so the solution, stop repeating the story. Just doing that alone will radically change how you show up in the world, especially if you're a woman. Same if you're a man. Literally the same thing, because but also for men, as they continue to repeat that story, they continue to repeat that story in their own mind and in their own life, right? And so whether you're in partnership currently or not, doesn't matter, but you'll walk around with this belief that if you get into partnership, that you have to provide for her, versus going into the relationship or being in the relationship that you're in right now and literally seeing this other like amazing human as truly equal to yourself. Now, I'm not talking about like she's the same, right? Because actually we're all incredibly unique. But seeing her as an equal to you, right? It changes the dynamics completely when it comes to the dynamics inside of relationships, when you actually see someone as an equal. And this is impacted in all areas, in jobs, in friends, in the community, in governments. I mean, it's everywhere, within religion. So the way in which you view yourself then impacts the way in which you see others. And the beliefs that you have about who you should and shouldn't be influence and impact who and how you show up in relationship with others, regardless of what sex you are. Okay, so again, solution, stop telling the story and any other subsequent stories that you might be continuing around what you can and cannot do. And so instead, right, you do the deep dive. What are the stories that I'm continuing to perpetuate that would make the woman the lesser, the weaker, right? And how ways that maybe you aren't even thinking that you actually do that. Again, doesn't matter who you are. These thoughts are still there and need to be investigated. And so then the next step is being able to actually create new stories and have new beliefs really deeply cultivated in your mind such that you show up differently, where the woman believes, I can absolutely, if I decide and desire, I can make as much money as I need to make to fully take care of myself and my family. If that's what you desire to be doing, right? That has to be a desire. And it's important to say, right, that there's desire, and then there's also like fear that will come in, and fear being some of these beliefs like, no, you can't, or no, you're not supposed to, or no, you're not allowed to, because that's like the man's role, right? So all of that has to get sorted through. And so then you bring in new beliefs about it is completely possible for you to be the person that brings in all of the money. If that's what you desire, and if that's what you guys need, it's also totally possible. And that's just one, right? Recreating new beliefs around what you are as a human, right? You're perfect already. You were born perfect. Instead of believing that you were born not good, right? Or you were born, what gets thrown around certainly in the religious culture that I was raised in, was that you're a sinner and that you're inherently bad, right? It's your nature, your core. And so instead of repeating that story, no, you're inherently not that way. You're inherently, I don't know that it's really useful to say good, but that you were born, that you are perfect. For whatever your experience here on the planet, your like time as a human, that there wasn't like a mistake that happened when you were born, regardless of what your circumstances were. Because the belief, the judgment that there was something wrong with you from the beginning is literally, again, it's repeating the original generational curse, the original story that brought shame into the world. For those that understand it that way. If you weren't raised with that belief, then you picked up shame from the impacts of that story being perpetuated in the culture. And so if you believe that when you were born, that you weren't born perfect, that you were born with something wrong with you, right? A lot of people refer to it as like, I was born broken. Then you're again perpetuating that belief that there is something inherently wrong with you. So you just change the story. And it's not to say that it just changes, right? Because then you got to intentionally go in and do the work at all the layers in all the areas to be able to write a new story and then live a new story. Because when you start to live a story that's rooted in, I'm perfect exactly the way I was born, like there was nothing wrong with me, I was as I was meant to be, and I just was, right? That's the place I've gotten to. Like, yeah, you just were. Then you move forward, right? And you rewrite the stories in your present day life that honor you. Instead of seeing yourself as something other than, as something less than, as something that you weren't meant to be, something that was wrong, something that was broken, you start to tell stories in your current life and your current thinking that support and honor who you are. Which means that as you bring more honor to who you are, you'll bring more honor into who you are going to be. So instead of continuing to bring in more shame into your life and all of the various ways that shame shows up like confusion, it shows up as fear, it shows up as doubt, it shows up as mistrust, it shows up as lacking of trusting others, all of these various ways that shame shows up, all the friends of shame that show up in your life. Instead of doing that, you'll actually start to bring in what I just referred to as the friends of honor and all of the things that are related to honor. You bring in more honor, which means you bring in more trust, you bring in more love, you bring in more faith, you bring in more goodness, you bring in more joy, you bring in more enjoyment, you bring in more inspiration, you bring in more of life being for you and of life being an adventure. And I'm literally starting to feel better right now as I'm talking to you, and I'm literally saying all these things. You bring in more of what you really want, what you really desire to be in your life. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with that as the primary thing to take away from this video from this teaching is honor who you are. And the more honor you bring to who you are, the more honor you will bring to the stories that you tell over and over in your mind, and the more honor you will bring to other people in your life, and the more honor you will bring to the life you are living and the human experience, the experience of being alive. You will literally infuse more honor into the story of being alive. It is probably the most impactful thing you can do for your life, literally, is bringing more honor to who you are. Because that sets into motion bringing all of the other things that bring the richness and the joy and the good health and the love to your life. And from that place, we create amazing things, right? We bring in more wealth, we bring in more good health, all the things that we want. Okay, so honor who you are, my main thing to you. For those of you that recognize, wow, I have so much of that other stuff in there, that shame, that I'm not good enough, that confusion, that indecision, that doubt. It also shows up as like, I don't know what I want. I don't know, what I want in my future, or what I want to be doing that's like bigger or more interesting, or I have no idea what I would be doing if I had more in my life, if I had more love, if I had more money. I'm not really sure what I would do, right? The other favorite that I've been hearing a lot lately, people say like, well, I don't need to be a millionaire, which gets into like a whole other conversation. And I'm certainly not saying you need to be a millionaire, but just the idea that we would like shut those types of dreams down, right? It's an indication that you're dealing with shame, right? And if you're saying to yourself things like, I should be thinner, or I should be, happier, or I should be able to manage my life more efficiently, more effectively, or I should be a better parent, those are just all signs that shame is more predominant in your life than honor is. And so you want to do a radical shift. So for those of you that recognize you need that radical shift to be bringing in more honor so you can create more honor in your life, that is the thing I do with people. I help people bring in more honor to who they are and to the experience they're having in their life, which results in more love, more trust, more money, greater health, and any of the other really cool, special things that are on your heart, the desires that you have. That is the path to bringing all of those things into your life. So reach out to me. You can drop a comment here. You can go over to Facebook Messenger and send me a private message, and let's start the conversation. That first step is my being able to hear what it is you really want in your life. And we will set up a time to be able to talk, to have conversation around what it is that you want in your life, what it is that is really pinpointedly stopping you from having it. And then if it feels like a good fit, we'll talk about what it looks like to work together, to walk alongside the journey of life together. And I will help you literally remove that shame. Get in there and see how it's impacting you, and then literally remove it. And then I will help you rewrite the story of honor in who you are right now and for your future. All right, you guys, as always, thank you for joining me here. And let me know how this has impacted you. Do you resonate with the shame story? What do you think about it? How has it impacted your life? And do you resonate with that desire to have more honor in your life? All right.